What is going on, everybody? James with Bass Layers, and today I'm going to do a little video on the pre-spawn and springtime bass fishing. So over the years here in Sacramento, what I've learned with the bass spawn, I know a lot of people want to get out, start catching some pre-spawn fish. The fish are starting to get fired up this time of the year, and we're waiting for those fish to start pushing up and start feeding. Go out right now and you're going to have some tough days. I've had a couple skunk days. Typically I know where to go in my ponds and drag Senkos or big baits on rock piles and stuff like that, but this year they just weren't eating for some reason, and just got to warm up. I think it's been a little bit colder than normal. It was warmer this time of the year last year, and so what's going on, as soon as the water temperature hits 55, those bass are really going to start moving, and that's coming very soon. Tactical Bassin always says the first full moon in February is when the fish will start pushing. I'm seeing a lot of people catch some real big ones at Clear Lake and stuff like that. Haven't been able to get out to the big waters. I plan on doing it soon, getting a kayak, getting a Native Tin Slayer LTE, and anyway, just got some roof racks installed on the car today. So what's going to go on with the spawn? So you're going to have okay, let's break it this way. You got your small ponds, your medium-sized ponds, and your like small lakes, and then your big lakes. Your smallest bodies of water in Sacramento, or where you're fishing, typically you're going to go first with the pre-spawn and the spawn, because they're going to warm up the faster. They're going to warm up the fastest. You got shallow water that's typically muddy this time of year after the rains. It's going to warm up, and those fish are going to start chewing, but the problem is with all the rains, it's hard for them to see, so you're going to have to use something loud, something bright. Bright red in the springtime, man. Those crawdads in the springtime, they get bright red. Bright red is one of the best things you could use. I like to use red lipless crankbait, doesn't matter what style you use. Red jigs and red spinnerbaits have also worked really well for me in the past. So yeah, those smaller ponds, they're going to warm up the fastest. You're going to get the spawn to go there in those spots first, and then your bigger bodies of water that are a little bit deeper, they'll start going, and then the other ones will start going, and then your mountain reservoirs, your highland reservoirs in like lakes like Folsom and all that stuff, they'll start going a little bit later. So if you really wanted to maximize your spawn fishing time, you can start off going to the small ponds like Tanzanite Pond and some of the other small ponds here in Sacramento where the water's going to warm up faster and they'll probably start spawning sooner. Those ones you'll probably have a little bit more luck at with the earlier in the year. And of course, all the spots in Sacramento are super highly pressured, hard to catch fish out of them. When you do, sometimes they're not that big. A lot of people keep all the fish in Sacramento, and that's just how it goes. You can get really lucky on some big fish right now, I'm telling you. If you get out there, those big ones, when it rains especially, and you get like a lot of rain and the water goes way up, they'll get up in the reeds, they'll get up in the bushes and the trees and the sides. Caught a lot of big fish that way. About to start getting out and going fishing a little bit more. It's supposed to be getting up into the 70s in the next week, so it will get a lot better. Fishing will probably pick up a lot more, and we'll be able to catch a lot more fish. The bass are going to start pushing up. They're going to be pulling out of the deep, and they're going to be staging themselves and getting ready to go up from the spots where they're pulling out of the really deep areas in the ponds. They're going to start moving, and they're going to start staging in the semi-shallows right before the flats and stuff like that. It's kind of tough to catch them right now, but you can catch some really big ones, man. Good time to throw some big soft plastic baits, the glides and stuff like that. Maybe another month or two, once they really start like pushing in and getting on beds, then the glides and stuff like that, once they start defending their beds, the glide baits and the wake baits, running them over the top of them and that kind of stuff, you're going to get some good reaction strikes. Sometimes in the muddier water, when you don't have electronics like me, you can't see where the bass beds are and you don't know that they're down there. So the best way to get them to react is noise, really loud noise, and just obnoxious stuff over the top of them. You used to watch my old videos from like Tanzanite Pond. I'd go out there in my raft and I'd tie on a crankbait, and I knew there was beds all down the side, but you can't see anything because it's so muddy, and I would just let the wind drift me down the side of the pond, and I'd take my crankbaits and I would just run the crankbaits back and forth like a figure eight out in front of my raft, And I caught so many bass off of beds that way because they're defending the bed, they're in a spot, and that crankbait's just going back and forth like this over, and they react on it. I caught a lot of fish doing that. It's kind of like figure eighting for muskie, or the 8-trap, how they do it. But you're not really trapping them against the wall, because like the 8-trap, you know, you want to trap them. Well, I guess you're trapping them against the top of the water with the 8-trap too. It's kind of the same thing, but it's more or less you're just pissing them off and getting them to attack it. You know how bed fishing goes. It's like you go to one bed and they won't touch it. You go to the next bed, and as soon as you drop your bait in there, bass is attacking it. So it's also about getting lucky and finding the ones that are super active. Last year I went out and I did some damage with the new prototype bait that I made, and I'll be making, I have a whole bunch of them coming down the line. If you guys want to get a hold of me and buy one of my baits, hit me up on Facebook if you can, or Instagram. I have a bunch of stuff sitting in a box. Facebook keeps giving me the old 30-day group ban, so I haven't been able to sell anything on Facebook. Kind of sucks when you tell the truth in the world that you get banned all the time for it. Anyways, so yeah, it's time, man. It's time. I think these fish are really going to push up in the next week here in Sacramento. So if you're ready to get out on some bass, I'd say get out there and start trying to pattern them. If you can get lucky and catch one fish, you'll start a pattern, and you'll be able to catch a whole bunch of them off that same pattern, because they'll be doing the same thing. They're out there looking for a meal right now, and they're looking for a big meal. Those biggest fish in the pond right now, those big females, they are looking for the biggest meal that they can eat, so they can sustain themselves and pack on as many eggs as they can, pack on the pounds, and get ready for that spawn. Now when you have the spawn going on, you'll get your males will pull in on the beds, the males will make the beds, and then the females, they cruise around with all their eggs on them, and they'll come in on a bed and they'll spawn. And once they spawn, the male kicks them out and they take off, and those big females will go around and they could spawn on multiple beds. They could spawn on like 5 to 10 different beds if they got enough eggs in them. It's hard to find the big females on beds. I've done it before, and I've failed miserably. We were at Clear Lake one time, and we found one on a bed on the shore in Kelsey Creek, and I kid you not, that fish was like over 15 pounds. I hooked into it on a spinning rod, and it didn't move. I hooked it and tried to lift up on the fish, and it did not move, and my hook bent out and just popped out of the fish. It was the craziest stuff ever. It's very, very rare to find a big fish like that on a bed. I've been fishing for 17 years now, and I have came across 2 giant fish on beds, which was Devin's 11-pounder and that one that we saw at Clear Lake. Besides that, like, most of the time you're going to find the males on the beds. When the females come in, it's going to be, they're going to come in, the male's going to corral her in, and she's going to lay her eggs. She may be on that bed for a day, maybe 2 days. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes they come in for an hour, 2 hours, and they do their thing, and they're out and they're on to the next bed. So finding those big females on the bed is tough. What you want to do is you want to fish big baits around the spots where the beds are, but where you're not seeing fish and where it gets just a little bit deeper. Those big fish are going to sit right in those spots, right out of where they can be comfortably in the sunshine, if that makes any sense. Like how Tactical Bassin says, you have that line down in the water where it's like your visual line. They get down so far to where the sun is not hurting their eyes, and they just sit down there and they're just cruising around eating, and when they want to come up and spawn, they'll pull right up onto a bed and spawn and pull right back out into the deep. Now, a lot of times some of our biggest fish in the springtime were on accident. My buddy Dave, years and years ago, we were at Avery Pond fishing for a fish on a bed. It was just a little male. He had on a tube bait, and he cast way on out there, way farther than he should have, and he was just like fixing his line and started to bring the tube in, and ended up hooking into like a 4.5, 5 pound bass. It was, at that time, it was the biggest fish we'd ever caught out of that pond, and we were just kind of like, oh dude, what are we doing? Like, why are we even fishing for this bass when all those big ones are out there? And it kind of had a little, you know, the light bulb goes off, and you go, okay, maybe I shouldn't just fish for the bed fish. And another thing that's really weird, when Devin caught his 11-pounder, that fish was not on a bed. We were cruising in a spot, and we saw the fish Devin saw the fish swim by and he freaks out, James, oh look, there's a giant right there. And I look over and I'm like, oh wow, big fish. But it wasn't on a bed, and we were just like, okay, well, good luck catching it. So we kind of ignored the fish because, I mean, made a couple pitches at it. It didn't want to have nothing to do with it. Devin pitches his bait out on a bed, and I don't know what triggered the bass to do it, but all of a sudden that 11-pounder came from 20 feet away, came over to the bed, and just locked onto his bait all of a sudden. So something else that I always say, put your bait on a bed even if there's not a fish around. If you see a bed, drop a jig in there. Sometimes those really big ones, they're either right off to the side or they'll be in the grass right there and you won't even see them. We've had fish rise up out of the grass that were right there and come onto the bed, and they're good 4 or 5 pound bass. Kind of the same situation with the 11. He tosses his jig out on that bed and the male was having a time with it, so the female sees it, comes way over and locks onto the bed and locks onto his bait. It took us 3.5 hours to catch that fish. Well, Devin, took him 3.5 hours to work that fish, but he caught it. We were on a raft that had holes in it, and I was literally using the hand pump and pumping the raft up while we were on the water, trying to stay on the water. And it was a sloppy mess. We had some guys in a bass boat going by, and they were in the same cove as us when we started fishing for that fish. They went all the way around the lake and came back. And the second they came around the point, Devin hooks into the fish, falls over in the raft. It was a nightmare, but we landed the fish. It was a little teamwork, but I mean, got Devin his PB of 11 pounds, and he'd only been fishing for 3 years, man. So I think there's something to that. I've put a lot of people on their first fish, and I've put a lot of people on their biggest fish. So my biggest fish is 813, and I have somehow caught 3 of them. 3 fish at 813, all weighed on different scales, which is even funnier. Hope this year to beat that. This is the best time to do it, is to get out there and go fish and look for those big ones. Now the other trick to it, if you're trying to catch some fish that are over 6 pounds, it's going to be hard to do it in these smaller ponds here in Sacramento. We have pulled some 6 and 7s out of these small ponds here in Sacramento. My biggest fish have came from Rancho Seco, Contra Loma Reservoir, and our little hidden pond over here that I used to fish. But all the fish died in there, so we don't know what's up with that pond. It's the Elkhorn spot. If you guys have been out there recently, you know which spot I'm talking about. Hit me up in the messages and tell me if you've caught anything out there. Because it was about 3-4 years ago we went out there, and me and Greg found 10, 12, 13-pound bass dead all over the place. There was like 40 to 50 dead bass. It was the saddest thing in the world. Now that place used to be awesome during the spawn. I do that stuff with the crankbait because the water's so stained out there, and I used to hook in some huge bass out there, but they would always work me because I'm a new fisherman and I don't know what I'm doing that well. But as I'm getting better and I'm learning, you upgrade your gear, you upgrade your line, you upgrade all your stuff, you make sure that everything is ready to go. Always check your gear before you go. That's another thing you want to do. With these bass, they don't care about line. Put on some 60-pound braid, 30-pound braid, put on some braided line, drop your bait in their face, piss them off, and hopefully you'll be able to hook into the biggest bass of your life. Hope this helps you guys. Get out there and go fishing. I got some stuff coming. Just went and got roof rack mounts, put on the car today, and going to go to Kayak City and go get me a kayak, and we're going to be doing the thing. No more on the shore. I mean, I have the Lifetime Tamarack kayak. Me and Devin bought them. Those things, they're not for fishermen. Those are if you want to go cruise around and have some fun on the lake for a day and not do anything like fishing, because it's not that fun. It's even hard to land a fish on those things because you want to tip over in them. But the Slayer LTE, I've done a lot of research on it, and those things ain't gonna flip over. Anyways, Urban Bass Slayers, love you guys. Thanks for watching. I hope to start getting out a whole bunch more videos for you guys. I want to start doing more videos like this where it's just information for you guys for the pond fishing, mostly around Sacramento area. I mean, this does work for people all over the place if you're fishing for bass. Just depends on where you're at, because I know guys up north, a lot of my buddies in Massachusetts and stuff, they're just getting to where ice out is ending and they might be able to get going fishing. But we've had open water here for a while and they're still not wanting to bite. I do know how to catch them that way, which is like Paul Bailey style. Go out and drop some big old Huddlestons in their face, and drag them like a worm. Same thing I'd be doing at my small ponds with the worm, just dragging them. Literally, you're just pulling your pole super slow and feeling every tick down there. You reel up your slack really slow, and you're just dragging them. And as those hit the rocks and they barely move, boom, and those fish are just sitting down there all grouped up. And when they're ready to eat, they're gonna eat it, man. Anyways, all right, guys, thanks for watching, and get out there, go have some fun. We're Bass Layers 2025. Let's do this.